Hello and welcome to another episode in the capture part, and we talk here about textures. Textures are of course all over the place and we need only to capture them. What I want to explain here in this tutorial, and the main part is here of course, how to peel an apple with the camera and how to get a texture that we can finally use on an object and in a way that we have not so much trouble. We have seen already that we can make some decisions in the banana tutorial. This is not the case here. We consider this just to be, first of all, a spherical object, and so I go here to work as if the shape of the whole thing is not so important. What is important here is the light and the way we capture it. And of course, I have started this series by saying just take an image, slap it into Cinema 4D and we are done, as the worst example possible, because normally when we do that we have maybe just a point and shoot camera. Of course, you might have something better, and we have not the best light situation, and we are pretty close to the object with a wide angle lens, and all of that is maybe then just not quite right. So where's the problem here? The problem here is, first of all, the blurriness of the texture. That has a little bit to do with the optics. They were not really great. Then we have a spherical-like object here, and we are pretty close to it. That means we have a wide angle lens, we have some distortion perhaps in it, and the closer we get to an object that is round, the less we get from the sides. The sides are critical anyway, and the closer we go, the more area here is critical distorted. The further away we go, the more from this middle field here we can use perhaps. The next part, and that is now exactly my main area here, is that we have here shadow, a darker side. Then here this area is maybe okay, but we can see it goes gradually here from dark to specular highlights. Specular highlights mean that the surface underneath is not visible anymore because the light is reflected pretty much to nearly 100%. And that takes all the fun out of the shooting. So we can't use this. Whatever we have done here, maybe we get something out when we say we adjust always here the middle part and we slice then everything, and that might work. And I think many of us will do something like this with success, but with a lot of work. And that is of course not what we like to have, because the more we change things, the less the quality is. We will not improve anything that was not in the camera. That's pretty much what we have. And the more we need here just adjustments with color and so on, the less we have finally fun with it. A good exposure is the start, and there's nothing that can compare to this. And then we need, of course, a very even light. Okay, I think I have introduced now here the problem, and let's have a look. So let's explain the setup, because this is the capture part here and we want to see how it was done. And as we have seen, normally when we have only one main light source, like from this window here on the table, then we get specular highlights and dark areas, not what we want. And when we have several light sources here, we can say we get rid of shadows, and based on the many lights that we have in the scene, we have not the need to have one super bright light, even if these guys here are relatively bright. I have more of these, to be honest. This is my standard equipment, 2 or 4 always in groups. And why I have limited here to 2? Because I have only 2 polarization filters for these guys. These gels are not really cheap, and so you don't have them flying around or sitting around. 2 is normally enough, and so I have set up this whole thing here just with 2 lights. Better would be to have here and here 2 extra lights as well. But anyway, I got away with it, because when you see the final result you will say that was okay and we do not need more light. Or if you have a third one, this would be placed here. When this here casts no shadow, maybe the apple has to be then a little bit higher. Anyway, so the main idea here was not just to have two lights here or two pairs of lights in the setup. The main idea here is to have a polarization filter here in front of this light source and in front of this light source. And the polarization gel is something that you normally find in many museums or wherever reproduction photography is done. And that's for a reason. And when I have explained it in the theoretical part, I will give you here just a little reminder. It's like a picket fence, and we have waves that goes here up and down or left and right, simplified of course. And with this picket fence in this direction, these waves here are just excluded and only the vertical ones are let through. That's simplified here again, and this light goes then to the apple and then to the camera. And with just the polarization gel, that wouldn't help here at all. And with only just this polarization gel, this wouldn't help a lot, because the light would only get a little bit dimmer based on the filter effect here, and the light that goes then here in the camera would be pretty much the same. And the same process here is of course on this side. We need to synchronize these gels because the direction is critical here. And then we have another polarization filter here, and that works exactly in the opposite direction. Again, this is simplified. You can certainly find a lot of literature about this process, which is maybe explained more in detail, but this is the standard explanation: picket fence vertical, picket fence horizontally, and then the light can go to the apple. And when it is set up in a correct way, we see only the surface illuminated, but we don't get direct light here into the camera. Same happens here, light in to the apple and then back, and we avoid exactly this light that has this specular problem, the pure reflective light, so to say. And this gives me then the option to have a very even light here, because I can just bounce the light here on that apple, and everything that would have a tendency for a specular is then eliminated. I show you that in a second, of course. And so we have to adjust this gel here in a nice way as well. This one here, that's mostly that you have a little gaffer tape here with an arrow, so you know exactly in which direction you want to have it. And then it's of course up to you to fine-tune this polarization filter in front of your camera. And when you have done all of this, the checkerboard comes first into the game, because this setup is then critical to have in the light checkerboard setup. And after you have done this, you go with the apple. And the process of photographing the apple was pretty simple. I have marked here my place, and every time when I needed another shot, I moved this apple here just 45 degrees to the next position, to the next position, to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and again. And I normally do this here twice, just for the sake of whatever. It's a feeling. Sometimes the rotation moves a little bit, and maybe I'm much more happy if I have a continuous thing. It's maybe not needed. 8 should be enough, and it depends of course on the surface that you have to photograph. And then comes the part where I take this apple, when it is here from the side now, where you have normally this little wooden thing out, and here the button, that we go one time to the side, and so this face then the camera, and then this side face the camera. So we get finally 10 shots, each time several bracketing shots just to be safe, and all of that should be then sufficient to get a nice texture from it. So what I want to do next is to show you these images just with a polarization filter, and then polarization filter on the camera and on the light sources, and one image of course without anything, so you can compare what happens. After that, the images that I have shot, and finally then the panorama of the peeled apple. And this is the first shot. This is done without any polarization filter, and you can see here clearly all the specular highlights. I zoom in into this, so you can see here the whole damage to the image, because this gives a light source away, and in the moment you have this texture on an apple in Cinema 4D and the apple would move and the specular highlight stick, that would look like as if the light would be attached to the apple, which is of course nonsense and maybe not so often the case. So the next image is then, and maybe I try to get here that a little bit better. So the next image is then with just a polarization filter in front of the lens, and you can see I haven't adjusted here anything. That is really raw out of the camera, just back. This is without any filtration. This is only polarization on the camera, so it eats some light away. You have to be aware of that. And then, surprise, this is with the light filtered, and it's also with the camera polarization. And so you have a light source that has polarization gels on it and the camera polarization filter, and if everything is set up nicely, you get rid of all these highlights and so on. There's a little tiny bit, of course, but it's much better, I would think, than before. And if you put more effort and more light sources in, each light source has not the need to be that bright, but you need more polarization filter, you need more setup time and so on. It's of course up to you what makes the most sense to you, where to invest time and effort. I do this here just to introduce you to the technique, and I think it shows it pretty nicely here which difference we have here. So I go now here through the 10 images of the apple, and as we have seen, I have shot 8 images one time around, 45 degrees each time. That means we need only an eighth of this front part, and we have also the top and the button. That means we go here just with an area like this here to work. Anything else has already too much distortion and is not illuminated for this purpose. And by the way, these white little guys are not reflections from the many LEDs. These are just texture points in the apple. It fooled me the first time, but it's just in the texture itself. So let's go one time through these guys here. It's maybe not the most exciting part to watch apples fly by, but you get already the idea. It's about, is there specular highlight, is there shadow, can we use this? And we have 3 exposures each time. Here I see a little bit specular highlights, but this is a very tiny area and I think I can get rid of it in Photoshop. Here I see a little bit light and here, but I'm getting picky here of course already. And then the top part, very important. This gives us a lot of clues finally when we stitch it together, because this gives us a nice overview. And of course the button part then as well. It should be now here. Here we have the button part. That's maybe not the best one. I have another one, but you get already the idea. And of course, always shoot details. As I have done this before with my point and shoot on the table, this gives you clues maybe if needed. In this case, we have pretty much covered everything, but normally I would always suggest shoot details. And of course, the color checker in the same light. And I have put here the polarization filter in the back because I have shot it also without, so I knew which one was with and without the polarization filter case, to be precise. So let's have a look through the final result. So, and I'm proudly presenting here the unpeeled peel from the apple. No apple was harmed during that process. And the beauty of that is that it works now for a sphere 100% precisely, even if we took it from an apple. And when we take the sphere, for example, as a standard, we would have the need to just put with the magnet tool, for example, the pole caps in to get a shape and to slimline it a little bit in the button area here. And then we have maybe to stir a little bit the sphere in its precision anyway to get a little bit more bumpiness in it. However, this texture here was done with the aid of Cinema 4D because I have created something that makes the whole process so much easier, and it will guide you with each and every part that we have shot to get it finally to this texture here. Again, this is just an apple. It's not something like an old painting where we need super precision. If we go very fast and sloppy and it looks like an apple, I think it's okay. But everyone has different preferences, and so I think I wanted to show you, of course, how it works in the post-processing part. I can't wait for it to start. I say thanks for listening through the capture part. I know it was maybe a little bit shorter, maybe too long for some, and that's always the problem, to find the right length, the right timing. I say sorry to be too long, I say sorry to be too short. Thanks for listening, have fun with it, bye bye.